content to share. So good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Traub. I am the Manager of Customer Success here at Email on Acid. I'm also pleased to be joined by Tom Wilde, the Head of Client Solutions at ProWriting Aid. Today, Tom and I will be discussing tips and strategies to improve the clarity and effectiveness of your emails. You know, we put so much emphasis on screenshots, especially here at Email on Acid, but how many of you really focus on your copy? And I mean really focus on it. You know, Tom is going to help you maximize your copy to more efficiently and effectively reach your subscribers with actionable tips you can begin applying to your emails right after this call, actually, which is really cool. So prior to getting started, a couple of webinar housekeeping items. First, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A area. We reserve 15 minutes or so at the end of the webinar to address as many as we can. Also, my customer success team will also be following up on any non-webinar related questions you might have. So if you have some other questions, please feel free to put them in Q&A. We're happy to help out. Also, this webinar is being recorded, and I can see the little recording button blinking, which is a good sign. And the recording and the slide deck will be made available on our platform for future reference. So without further ado, let me introduce Tom Wilde of ProWriting Aid. Tom, good evening. How are you today?
Hi, Jeff. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you ever so much for inviting me to join you guys. I hope everyone's having a great day. And like Jeff says, we're looking forward to sharing some actionable tips that you can put into practice straight after this webinar today. I'm going to dive straight in because I know we've got kind of limited time and I've got an awful lot to get through and I've got to try and remember everything I want to tell you. But yeah, please do put your questions in Q&A as we go along. We've got time for those at the end. But let's get started straight away. So we're talking clarity and effectiveness and how to write great emails every time. Let me give you a quick introduction just about myself first and foremost. So I'm Tom Wilde. I'm Head of Client Solutions at ProWriting Aid. What is ProWriting Aid? Well, if you don't know, it's a tool that helps everybody write better. So it doesn't matter if you're an experienced copywriter, if you are a published author, or if you're starting your career journey, ProWriting Aid helps you by improving the quality, the consistency, the clarity, and the efficiency of the writing process. So I work with our clients to understand their writing challenges and to help them customize ProWriting Aid to overcome those challenges and issues they've got. As you might expect, anyone at ProWriting Aid, of anyone at ProWriting Aid, we love learning, love language, love writing, but I also love growing vegetables. That's just my little kind of what I do on the side, just for my downtime, as well as bringing up 3 kids. But if you want to contact me after today, please do. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can see my LinkedIn handle there, my Twitter handle, and you can also see contact details for ProWriting Aid. So look us up on Twitter, join our community forum on Facebook. We love talking to other writers, whether fiction, nonfiction, whoever you are, wherever you are. Okay, that's the introduction. Let's have a quick look at our objectives for today. What we're going to do is look at why clarity should be your #1 goal. So what is it about clarity in writing emails that makes it so important? Why should you be putting your reader first? Okay, the two are really closely linked. We care about clarity and it's all for the sake of your reader. And we're going to explore that in a bit more detail, but those are really just the kind of the entrees, if you like. The main course is going to be looking at the 5 principles of clarity. Okay, and that's where we're going to get into the detail. Let's get straight in with clarity and how to make it your #1 goal. So I've got a question to ask. When did you last hit delete in anger when reading an email? When did you last give up reading an email and move to the next message? When did you last get frustrated by communication from your bank, your utility company, your insurance provider, your telecoms provider? Okay, and why was that? So put your answers in chat. What is it that made you hang up, give up, move on to the next message, press delete, put it in the bin, whatever? You felt you kind of, felt you wanted to start tearing your hair out. What was it that made you start doing that with the messages you were seeing? So, okay, love that first one. Thank you, Nikki. Email was way too long. Delete in anger after the 5th email of the day from the same company. Brilliant. I gave up on an email this morning, too long. Relevance, love that. Leftover Laura Ipson. I didn't even think about that one. That's a great one, Mike. Absolutely spot on. Brilliant. Okay, these are great ideas. And I made a list, and I've got things like, yeah, too vague, right? They're repetitive. They're too long. You've got Michelle saying, I wasn't part of the segment they were addressing. Brilliant. So all of these things undermine our confidence. And if it's to do, well, most of these things are to do with clarity, right? If you don't have clarity as your number one goal, you are much less likely to hit the objectives you've set for a particular email or piece of communication. Now, back in the day, I spent 12 years helping to build a company that trained in writing skills, business writing skills. And we used to talk about the Economist and the Economist style guide. And they had a fantastic quote in the, a fantastic part of the Economist style guide that says this. The first requirement of the Economist is that it should be readily understandable. Clarity of writing usually follows clarity of thought. So think what you want to say, then say it as simply as possible. That's from a newspaper, a weekly newspaper that was founded 177 years ago. And there is a phenomenal style guide. Lots of people are interested in style guides, well worth a read. But I love that because it captures everything about clarity. Clarity of thought, clarity of writing, and one usually follows the other. Okay, what is clarity? So let's have a quick look at a few items that clarity is. It's writing that's easy to understand. It's vocabulary, sentences, and paragraphs that are reader focused. And it's rich, specific language that adds to your reader's understanding. Now, we know that, but what I want to overcome is the myths of what clarity isn't. Okay, so what clarity isn't, it's not omitting important information because it's complicated. Okay, so just because information is complex and complicated doesn't mean you should leave it out to make your email clear. You just need to find the way to communicate it. Okay, it's important information. Clarity also isn't how exciting, engaging, or unique your email is. So you might think you've got the most original email out there, but if it's not clear, it doesn't matter how exciting it is, doesn't matter how unique it is, it's not going to resonate with your reader. So clarity is super important. Okay, so we know why clarity is so important. We know why we need to make it our number one goal. What is it about the reader? Well, putting your reader first, in my view, is the first starting point of the writing process. Too many of us launch into writing as an afterthought. We're close to deadline. We've got to get this thing out. We don't think, we just write. So what happens is our writing becomes the stream of consciousness. And that's completely the wrong way of doing it, because you're writing for the writer. You're writing for yourself. You've got this information here, you're putting it down, and it makes sense to you, but it will not make sense or risks not making sense to your reader. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do with reader, to make sure you follow reader-focused writing principles, is stop. Okay, simple. Don't write, stop. Think about who you're writing to. And I know you guys, most of you know, you're trained writers, you're competent, you're really good at what you do, but it's really easy to fall into that trap of not thinking about the audience time and again, or becoming lazy about it. I know you'll be working to idle customer profiles and target audiences and personas, but really just think before you write. Some simple questions help put you in the reader's mindset. So I use a kind of reader questionnaire, if you like. 5, 6, 7 questions. Doesn't matter exactly what the questions are. They'll vary for each audience you've got, but they could be things like this. Who am I writing to? What's the subject? How much do they know about what I'm going to tell them? What are the particular issues they care about? How do they feel about these issues? And what questions might they have? As I said, those questions will vary. Different audiences, different products, whatever it is you're trying to communicate. The point is, it's your mindset. think about your reader before getting into the writing so that you're writing from a reader-centered point of view. And it's as simple as that. Okay, that's it. Those are the two starters. Those are the entrees done. Let's move into the detail, the 5 principles of clarity. Okay, we're going to look at subjects and verbs, glue words, readability, being specific, and we'll end with KISS. Okay, let's get into number 1, subjects and verbs. Subjects and verbs are the stars of your writing, okay? They are, well, the subjects are the main actors, right? They are the items, the people, the things that do whatever is being done, okay? So do not conceal them. Don't hide them away. This goes for fiction writing. This goes for non-fiction writing. Subjects are the main actors. But more than that, it's the verbs that bring your writing to life. Okay, they keep readers engaged with what you're trying to tell them. Giving power to your verbs, as it says here, makes your writing more direct, more clear, more effective. Now, we're going to look at 2 things here. We're going to look at the passive voice and we're going to look at nominalization. Okay, both are to do with using subjects and verbs in the right place in the right way. They will help bring your writing to life. Let's get straight in with the passive voice. Okay, what is the passive voice? Now, you've probably all heard of the passive voice. Not everybody has, but most of you probably have. The passive voice is where you put the subject, the object before the verb. So in a normal sentence, it goes subject, verb, object. That's what the reader expects. That's what we like to read. With the passive voice, we put the object before the verb. Often the subject is completely left out. So often the subject isn't even in the sentence. We'll look at an example in a minute, okay? Okay, why do we do it? We do it when we want to be vague about responsibility. And it's not unique to business writing, but in business, we like to think that using the passive voice makes it more important or sound more important, makes it sound more formal. But actually, the problem, we're taking away the power from the sentence. We're making the information less clear. And more formal. We're making the reader work harder to understand the information. So the passive voice is not grammatically incorrect, but we tend to overuse it. You should be looking at your writing, finding the examples of the passive voice and swapping them out for the active voice if you can and if it's appropriate. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. Okay, these sentences are all written in the passive voice. Let's get it all written in the passive voice. So an offer was made. The passive voice is overused. The presentation will be delivered by Tom. So you can see the object in each of these sentences comes before the verb. And in fact, in 2 of the sentences, the subject is missing. So an offer is the object, was made is the verb, the subject is completely missing. Likewise, in the second, the passive voice is overused. We don't know by who or by whom. Okay, so the subject is missing. The presentation will be delivered by Tom. So we know the subject is here, the object's here before the verb. None of these sentences are wrong. But if we swap these sentences into the active voice, get there eventually for some reason, there we go. We can see the difference. So here, I'm adding the subject. I'm giving someone responsibility, making it accountable, completing the picture of the information for the reader. XYZ Co. made an offer. Okay. We overuse the passive voice. Tom will deliver the presentation. Don't hide behind the passive voice. Okay. Give your writing power and give power to your reader. Give them all the information and in the order in which they'd expect it. They will thank you for it. Okay, hidden verbs, right? This is a real passionate area for me. Verbs bring writing to life. Okay, they are what keep the reader engaged. Look at any novel you enjoy reading, and it is the verbs that do the legwork, do the work. Okay, and yet nominalization, which is hiding verbs, is a process of turning verbs into nouns, and we all do it. Right, you may be new to the term, but I guarantee you do it regularly. Okay, let's have a look at how we spot nominalization, how we stop it. Okay, So here are some examples of nominalized verbs. Okay, so we see the first one, perform an analysis. Anyone in chat like to tell me? Well, let me give you the first one actually. So the first one is analyze. Don't say perform an analysis, just say analyze. Anyone who wants to add any of the others in chat, please feel free to do so. So requires a combination of would simply be, come on, someone in chat, anyone? Okay, it's combine. We're moving on, make a decision, decide. Okay, offer some motivation, motivate. Thank you, Edward, that's great. So perform a review, just review. You don't need to perform a review, just review something. Make an adjustment, just adjust. Offer an explanation. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Copywriters do this all the time, exactly. Okay, explain. Make an announcement, just announce. Okay, so we don't need to hide behind noun forms and long forms like that. We can just cut to the chase, give power to your verbs. Right, how do we fix these faults? How do we fix the issues with passive voice and hidden verbs? Firstly, passive voice. Look for places where you've used the word by, okay? It's a good indicator that you're using the passive voice. My uncle was eaten by a crocodile, okay? I can tell that's in the passive voice. I used to use that one when teaching English, right? Was eaten. So I've got two verbs in there. I've got the verb to be in the present or the past or the future. So, and I've got the main verb. So eaten, it's the, in this case, it's the past participle. So I've got two verbs in there. If I've got to be in there with a second verb, it's a good indicator that I'm using the passive voice. And then swap your sentences. Grab that subject at the end of the sentence, or if there is no subject, work out what the subject is and move it to the beginning of the sentence. Hidden verbs, look for the shon verbs. And by shon, I mean T-I-O-N or S-I-O-N. Okay, look for those words. So motivation, for example, consideration. Also, MENT and ANCE, they're a good indicator that you're using noun forms where you could use verb forms better. And then simply take that noun and turn it back into the verb, okay? It's quite straightforward. And actually, once you start doing it, they start popping up all over the place and you start criticizing every piece of writing that lands on your desk, believe me. Okay, so how can Pro Writing Aid help with this? Okay, well, we spot passive verbs, we spot nominalized nouns as well. You can see here, we've got a passive verb example here. It's flagged in the document through the real-time checker, and it's throwing up a suggested alternative. So it's saying, hey, don't write resource packs have been dispatched, write I have dispatched resource packs. Okay, simple. And you can see up here, it's spotted managed to complete as well. And it's going to tell you, hey, don't use managed to plus another verb, just use completed, use a stronger verb. Okay, that's number one. That's principle number one done. Let's move on to number two, glue words. Okay, again, this is another slightly addictive one, believe me. Right, two types of words. There's glue words and there's working words. Let's have a look at what they are. So, working words convey meaning and contain the sentence's most essential information. What do glue words do? Well, they make the essential pieces of information stick together. And there are 200, they are the 200 most commonly used words in the English language. We'll get there. So I'll show you what I mean and how we spot these in a sentence. First and foremost, a sentence with too many glue words is sticky, okay? Your reader will get bogged down. It will slow them down. So avoid too many glue words. What are glue words? Well, these are some of them. And you can see they are typically kind of prepositions, they are conjunctions, they're articles, and there are 200 of them, okay? Now, how many glue words is okay in a sentence? We work this out. So at Pro Writing Aid, we do all this analysis, and we know that a sentence with more than 40% of its words as glue words is what we call sticky. So you want to aim for sentences that have fewer than 40% of their words as glue words. And you can use Pro Writing Aid to analyze this. It's no problem at all. And by the way, you can use it freely as well. So I'll show you that in a bit. Okay, so we've got a 40% limit. how do we find sticky sentences? Okay, so you look for sentences that are overly long. So if they're overly long, they're going to have there's a good indication that there are probably some a high degree of glue words in there. They have lots of prepositions. They have lots of conjunctions. Okay, those are telltale signs. Lots of prepositions, lots of conjunctions are going to throw up or going to be triggered as sticky sentences. How do we fix a sticky sentence? Well, let's have a look at an example of one. Okay, so for those of our customers who would like to see all of the detail about our most recent product launches and also any updates, you can find everything on this page. Now, it's an exaggerated example, but you get the idea. Let's have a look at the sticky words, the glue words in this sentence. Right. Now, if I read those out for those of who would like to see all the most and any can find on this, you've got no idea what I'm talking about. So you see, they don't actually add meaning to the sentence. They're just gluing everything else together. However, if we show the working words, customers detail about recent product launches, updates, everything page, you're starting to get an idea of what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, so the working words are working. They're doing the hard effort, right? And that's what you need to focus on. So we cut down on the number of glue words to make the sentence work harder for us. You've got to make every word count. How are we going to do that? Well, let's try cutting out a bunch of those glue words. Okay, so I've just done this. I'm going to show you the results. I've kept all the working words and I've got this. Customers who want detail about our recent product launches and updates can find everything on this page. Now, you might have a different solution there. You might have a different way you want to phrase this. It's going to depend on who you're writing to, obviously. However, the point is, I've already cut out about 60% of those glue words. So I'm making the sentence work harder. It's less effort for the reader. They're spending less time understanding the same information. I could even go further. I could just write for details about our product launches and updates, click here. And there I've only got one glue word. Okay, it might go too far. You might not want to go to that level, but you get the idea, right? So we are cutting out the glue words. So we're less than 40% of our glue words in our sentence. Less than 40% of the words in our sentence are glue words. Okay, how does Pro Writing Aid help? Well, we have a sticky sentences report. So this does nothing but spot sentences with a high proportion of glue words. This sentence it's picked up has got almost 74% of its words are glue words. And you can also see in the sticky sentence report, we spot semi-sticky sentences too. So that'll look, I think it's around 25% of the semi-sticky sentences. Really good indicator of where you can just tighten your writing to the benefit of your reader. Okay, let's move on. Principle 3, I'm just going to grab a drink actually. Readability. We all have heard the term readability. It means different things to different people, but the bottom line is you need to ensure your readability score is appropriate for your audience. Okay, how readable your writing is really does matter, and the most effective writers make their work easier to read, not harder. Okay, so embrace readability scores. You might not know this, but the readability level of most mass market fiction is actually 7th grade. Okay, so when you see organization companies aiming for 7th or 8th or 9th grade in terms of readability level, that's generally about right. And you should be doing something similar. Let's have a look at what readability means. Okay, so readability means that your writing is clear and easy to follow. Okay, it means that your ideas are the stars of your writing. So you're really focusing on the ideas, not everything around them. And you've taken your audience's understanding into account. Okay, so that's critical. And again, it will depend on, what your ideal customer profile is, the persona you're targeting, whatever. That is going to have an impact on the readability level you aim for. What readability doesn't mean, however, once again, we're revisiting like we did earlier, this doesn't mean that you're writing something that's boring or uninspired, right? You don't need to, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't use domain specific or interesting words. And it doesn't mean your writing is dumbed down, a really important one, okay? This does not mean you're dumbing down your writing, but it means you're making your complex ideas, your information understandable to a specific level of audience. And it doesn't mean the ideas are uncomplicated. Once again, you can get across complex information, but you can aim for a reasonable readability grade, and I'll show you how. How do you check readability? Well, use a readability score. Okay, there are lots out there. You've probably seen them, and there's Flesch Reading Ease, Flesch Kincaid, Dale Chow formula, there's a Gunning Fogg formula, and you will see lots of these available in most word processors. And there are lots of free readability calculators out there too. Definitely encourage you to try some. Some of them you'll run into limits on kind of word counts and things like that. You can, of course, use Pro Writing Aid. We have our own readability checker, and I'll show you that in a second. But it's important, however you do it, okay? It predicts whether your writing will be readily understandable by your reader. So it does that by measuring different factors and how easy to read your text is. So it looks at things like sentence length, word familiarity, even average syllable count per word. Okay, how do we improve our readability score? So, first of all, ask yourself if you're using easy to understand vocabulary. I know this is an obvious thing, right? But I've seen it time and time again, particularly working with I think people, the legal sector, where they're using highly verbose language, highly complex vocabulary, and making it difficult to understand. Okay, so am I using easy to understand vocabulary? Are my sentences short and to the point? Am I using too much jargon? And am I getting directly to my point without wandering around too much? Can I trim extra words from my sentences? So ask yourself those questions as you're reviewing your document, and run the readability report, however you're doing it. Make some changes and run the document through a readability tool once again and see the difference you've made. Okay, let me show you an example. So in Pro Writing Aid, you can see we've got our own readability report right here. I've highlighted it on the reports toolbar. You can see in the left-hand toolbar, it gives you some statistics about the document, so reading time. It also gives you the Flesch Reading Ease score, the Flesch Kincaid grade, as well as a couple of others. We here tend to focus on Flesch Reading Ease score. It's just we do it for consistency's sake. But Pro Writing Aid looks at readability at a paragraph level too. So you'll see here it's highlighting a very difficult to read paragraph. So it looks for very difficult to read and slightly difficult to read and easy to read paragraphs, grades each one, color matches it, and will highlight it for you. It won't rewrite the paragraph for you. You need to do that. But then you run the report again and you see whether you've managed to bring your readability grade down or achieve what you need to. As I said, remember the ways of looking at readability. Look at the superfluous language, the long sentences, trimming words, and you will improve your readability score. Okay, this is great. We are moving rapidly through these points. Principle 4. Okay, so we've got 4, then we've got 5, and then we'll go to questions. So principle 4 is being specific, or be specific. And here I want to talk about putting people into your sentences and avoiding vague and ambiguous words. So putting people in sentences, and I mean, using we, not the company, right? Using lawyers, not the legal profession. So I'm sorry if I'm picking on the legal sector, by the way. Vague words. So there are lots of vague words and lots of ambiguous words. More, good, excellent, large, better, some. They're all vague, okay? And they can be ambiguous. So be specific. Your reader will thank you for it. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of examples. Here's the first. We've made some improvements to our store and now offer many more product lines. It's a perfectly fine sentence, right? But it's just a bit vague and a bit meh. If I actually add some specific detail into that, I'm answering the reader's next question, which is the kind of so what, right? So We've extended the floor space by more than 2,000 square feet, which means we've increased our product lines by 50%. Now, that is being specific. However, some of you will have noticed I've also increased the word count, and this is important. Clarity doesn't always equal brevity. Okay, this is not about beating yourself up over the number of words you've got in your document. It's about making the words work for you. So make sure that you are making the right choices. When you're being specific, you're adding the right information to make it more readable and more relevant to your reader, even if you're adding more words to that sentence or that phrase or that paragraph. Okay, you are doing the right thing. Be specific. Okay, how Pro Writing Aid can help. So there are lots of areas that Pro Writing Aid helps with being specific, but what I've highlighted here is our overused words check. So it compares your writing to published writing. It will look at specific words you're using and look at those that you're using more frequently than we see in published writing. So here it's picked up that I'm using very more than we would see in published writing. Okay, and that's an issue because very is a generic description. Okay, so you can tighten your writing by not using very. So I would now make the edit, I would run the report again and see the improvements it's made. Okay, moving on. Principle number 5, KISS. Keep it short and simple, as I'm sure you all know. And I'm going to talk you through how to kiss with confidence. Okay, so elaborate phrases and verbose writing simply make the reader work harder, and they're not going to thank you for that. Short words and phrases are usually the most powerful, right? And if you remember the best speeches made, the best speeches you've read, books you've read, marketing communication that you've read, it tends to follow that point, okay? It's delivering impact and power, but with short words and phrases, okay? So remember, every word has to work hard for you. Right, how do we kiss? Well, here's some examples. And if you want to add your suggestions, please do in chat, okay? So, for example, don't say behind schedule. Actually, just tell them what you mean. It's late, okay? The reader will thank you for it. Demonstrate, show. In excess of, it's more than. Okay, is of the opinion that, thinks. Make changes to, change. A large number of, many, terminate, and you get the idea, right? Correspond with, talk to. Okay, so just be confident in saying, using the short form. Again, the reader will thank you for it. Okay, how do we tackle KISS? There's 3 steps to it. Cut out redundant words, replace long words with short ones, and replace long phrases with short ones. Let's have a look at an example that I've drawn up. Okay, so here we go. We've given great consideration to the issues. The new plans afford an opportunity to demonstrate our commitment going forwards, right? I mean, that is just the kind of management speak that gets makes me want to pull my hair out. So let's tackle it first. Let's cut out redundant words, right? And I'm going to start with that term going forwards, because what really does it mean? Do you ever go backwards? Have you got a time machine? Probably not. So let's cut that out, right? That's a redundant phrase. So we've now down to we've given consideration to the issues. The new plans afford an opportunity to demonstrate our commitment. Simple as that. But now I'm going to replace long words with short ones. So I'm going to replace afford with show, and I'm going to look at afford with give, and I'm going to swap out demonstrate for show. So let's do that. There we go. We've given great consideration to the issues. The new plans give an opportunity to show our commitment. Now, some of you will still have noticed things like there is some nominalization going on with consideration. That's a shon word, remember? So we've still got work to do. Let's replace long phrases with short phrases. And we'll do that by taking out given consideration to, and we'll change that for thought about, and we'll change given opportunity to allow us. So we end up with this. We thought a lot about the issues. The new plans allow us to show our commitment. Now, once again, that might not be your preferred interpretation. That might not be the solution you come up with. That might not be relevant to your readers, your audience, but go through those steps and you will end up with tighter copy that is working hard for your reader. Okay. And I guarantee, KISS will be a central part of what you're doing. It's a really useful technique. Okay. How does Pro Writing Aid help? So again, there are many ways Pro Writing helps in the various reports, the real-time checker up here, but I've picked our length report, which looks at sentence length because it's a good indicator that you could apply KISS principles. Okay, so you can see here it's looking at the whole report and it's grading each sentence chronologically, or rather tallying them, giving you the word count per sentence. So you can quickly see where your super long sentences are. Those are the ones that you might want to focus on first to see if you can apply KISS principles to them. Right, and that's it. It's as simple as that. I think it was a whistle-stop tour, so I'm really sorry if anyone got lost. Please do add some questions to Q&A. Just a quick reminder, we looked at why clarity should be your #1 goal. We looked at how to put your reader first, and then the 5 principles of clarity. I really hope you got something out of today. But yeah, please shout with your questions.
Yeah, Tom, boy, I took so many notes. My writing, I'm in big trouble moving forward. I've got a lot of work to do, so I do appreciate everything here. Some really good stuff. So there was a question came in from Andrew, and this isn't just regarding copy itself, right? I mean, we're focused on clear, concise copy, but what about, do you have any tips or anything regarding writing great attention-grabbing headlines? So I think he's referring to maybe a subject line, or maybe the headline in the email itself.
Yeah, I mean, so headlines, exactly the same principles apply, but to an even greater extent. You've got to make sure every word works really hard. I would really look at some of the kind of sticky sentence principles, making sure you've got no superfluous words in there. Subjects and verbs in subject lines are really important, and there are so many. I think we've got a couple of blogs on our site written about how to write great headings, great subject lines. But yeah, that's it. It's subjects and verbs, and getting rid of the fluff, getting rid of the glue words.
So right to the point, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see, reading through these, here's one. Can you speak a little bit more about using we instead of the company? This user said that he or she often avoids we if they're writing an email that isn't from a specific person or group of people, because they think the audience may read and ask, who's we? But it sounds like we may actually be a great option. So I guess it's really about using we instead of the company or something similar.
Yeah, right. And this is a really interesting question because you need to have confidence to do it, right, Jeff? And to try it. And it's not always applicable, right? There are situations where you will, because of the company's style or because of what you're writing about, you need to refer to, something in the third person, the company or whatever it is. The important thing with using we is consistency. So if you're going to start using we, and this happened to me just today working on a case study, right? I was reading, I'd used we, but then I realized actually it's a little bit ambiguous. Who exactly is we? So make sure you're checking, you're proofing your document, and it's very clear who the we is. But the point is that you are giving, you're kind of making you have a better chance of making a close connection with the reader if you're giving them information, if you're using terms like we. You're making them more involved, okay? And you're kind of making it yourself more accountable because you're saying, hey, as a writer, I'm part of this, right? So it's just my advice would be give it a go, right? Just see what you feel. Run it by your colleagues, right? Read it out loud. That's something we haven't tackled today, but always read your copy back out loud and just, how does it sound, okay? If it sounds like it's warmer, if it sounds like it's more personal because you're using we, then you're probably onto a good thing.
No, that's good, Tom. And actually, I was thinking, a lot of times when I write an email, and this, of course, we don't always have time to do this, but for me, it's really important to let it sit. Like I'll let it sit for an hour, 5 minutes. If I could let it sit overnight, even better. Then I come back and reread it out loud or aloud, like you just said. And suddenly you think, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? you get out of that initial original mindset in which you're writing the email, and suddenly you approach it from a different perspective, and that's where you start finding all of these potential changes.
Right, Jeff, and you've hit on a really good thing there, because something I didn't talk about, which was the connection between the kind of reader-centered writing or reader-focused writing and principles of clarity, is that what you should be doing, when I said stop and think about your reader, is applying some principles of kind of planning and structure. How are you actually going to tell your story? What you got to say? How are you guiding the reader? You need to hold them by the hand through the information you've got to tell them. Right. And if you are writing and putting something down on paper or on the screen all in one go, the chances are, you're absolutely right, Jeff. You give it a couple of hours, overnight is great, come back to that. You'll see that you are in a certain frame of mind and you will want to make some changes for the better. Totally agree with that. It's a really good idea.
Yeah. I read a paper from my university days recently. I came across it by just going through stuff, and I shouldn't have read it because I was devastated by what I had actually read.
It's a great example though, right? You're university, if you're anything like me, you're definitely leaving papers to the last minute. You're up late at night, you're writing it. You're not trained to be a writer. The difference between university and here in business is that university, someone is paid to read your writing. You have a captive audience. They don't have a delete button or a bin. I mean, they do, but they shouldn't use it. Here, you've got to make your words work that much harder because you're fighting for attention with so many other messages that your readers receiving, every minute, every hour.
Exactly. Great point. So a couple questions here regarding effective CTAs. Now, copy is the body, but I would also think, do you guys consider CTAs as also being part of the copy? And is there a right way to have a button? Maybe if it's the button might have a few extra words in it, but if it's okay, because if it's effective, I guess the bottom line is if your CTA is a sentence long with 10 words and it's working, then maybe you could tighten it up. But do you have any suggestions there, I guess is what I'm getting at, Tom?
Yeah, so, okay, first and foremost, I'm not a CTA expert, and I know, there are people in this field that are great at this kind of stuff. Personally, at Pro Writing Aid, we use a lot of A/B testing to test CTAs, to look at what's most effective. Again, verbs, doing words, get people engaged. You're likely to get a reaction. But I have seen some CTAs that are more than the kind of 2 or 3 words long, and they work. It really depends on the subject and the audience. Personally, I prefer keeping them short and just making sure they're punchy and engaging. But yeah, I'm not an expert on them.
And I agree as well. And also CTAs can be dependent on where they're located in an email as well. So you start playing with a bunch of different variables, not just what you're saying, but where you're placing that CTA button. So yeah, A/B testing is absolutely the way to approach this as well. Well, let's see. Oh, Eleanor, good to hear from you. I'm glad to see you're here. Eleanor asks that many times she'll turn a sentence into the passive format rather than using I too much. Any recommendations around getting around this?
Yeah, okay, so it's a temptation, I know, because, and again, that's why we see the passive a lot in business writing. People don't want to take account, don't want to be kind of make it clear who's responsible. The classic is kind of like, a decision was made, right? Rather than the board decided or we decided, because maybe you're delivering bad news. Once again, I think, you're being honest and you're doing your readers a favor if you can use the subject as much as possible. Now, if it's it can present a problem if you're, making it repetitive. Maybe are you mixing it up? Is it the company? Is it specifically you? But I would try to avoid certainly overusing the passive. There's nothing wrong with it, right? But it really does stand out if you're overusing it. And I might seem repetitive to you, but the chances are your reader's going to prefer that to just kind of staid, dull writing where it's relying on the passive. So I would go with think about alternatives you could use and try to avoid the passive voice where possible.
Right. No, excellent. We just went through all the questions. Are there any other questions anyone can think of? And once again, this deck and the recording will be made available because this is solid gold, this information, to be honest with you. So we want to make sure everyone has access to
Jeff,
it.
I just wanted to mention, I've seen in chat that Michelle mentioned that she uses Read Aloud to read my copy back to me in Word or Outlook, because sometimes you're just too close to it. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, right? We've all got different techniques for doing it. Read it aloud, get it read. Yeah, use a Read Aloud or screen reader. Anything like that is going to help you hear it kind of in a different voice or see it from the reader's perspective. It is really useful. And these things are about building them into your routine. These are habit things, like that reader questionnaire that I mentioned, those reader questions. It's just about having a habit. It's not about saying I've got to answer these questions every time. It's just having that habit of thinking in a different way and the processes you use to write.
No, thanks for catching that in chat. I was so focused on the Q&A box.
No problem.
See. And this is great because it's funny, Tom, when I talk to, and I'm sure everyone out there, this happens to all of you, when someone starts talking about email marketing and what we all do, people just don't understand the process that it takes to get an email from an idea and creative to the copy, to the development, to the testing, to the deployment, and then what you do after the step. So there is so much involved. And like when I tell my wife that, she's just, no, not really. And each step is as important as the step before it, right? So that copy, the creative, having that idea is hard, but then getting it on paper where then you're having nice, clear, concise, streamlined communication, and then having it coded and then having it test okay and show all the screenshots on all the devices is a pretty tough, complicated process. So it's really important to highlight that some people do skip over the copy at times because it's easy to skip over, right? You write something that you can get out the door quickly, but it makes a huge difference. And not only does it make a huge difference in terms of in getting your message across, but you're going to increase reader engagement. You most likely you're going to increase your IP reputation because people are going to be less prone to unsubscribe, or you might get less bounces. People are going to open your emails and engage with them more. So this trickles all the way down from start to finish. So the more time you put into that process, obviously, the more you're going to get out at the end of the day.
Yeah, Jeff, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I mean, you think about how many people are vying for the attention of your audience on a daily basis. If you're not putting the work in, if you're skipping some of those stages in the process, you're only damaging the chances of actually engaging the reader. And I agree. I've seen too many, we're guilty of it ourselves, where we focus too much on certain elements, but thought, hey, we can write an email in minutes, but actually, these things take time, really do, to get right and to craft well.
Yeah, and I know, Tom, you and I talked a little bit about this as well before the webinar. And suddenly I get suspicious of emails that aren't written well, right? I think this is a phishing attempt, or if I see a spelling error or grammar error or something's used out of context, I am suddenly suspicious because, and we all should be, because there are so many attempts at getting our personal data or financial information. It happens every single day, all the time. So we almost come into these situations with our guard up.
Right, and how many chances do you have, once you've lost the attention of someone, once you've lost trust, and that we've had clients before now that have lost customers because the grammar mistakes in their customer support emails, has undermined the confidence. And these things happen. So yeah, you've got to make sure that it's hitting the mark every time. Absolutely.
Yep, definitely. Let's see, maybe give it another minute. Anyone else have any questions? I know we could definitely covered a lot of ground, a lot to sink in, but I don't know, maybe some of you are out there looking at some emails you're about to send right now and trying to streamline the copy as we're on the call. Yeah, I think that might be it, Tom. Anything else to add before we close it up?
Well, hey, Jeff, I just wanted to say a big thank you. I really enjoy, I don't get a chance to do many webinars. I love talking on this subject, as you can probably tell. So yeah, I hope you didn't get bored of the sound of my voice. Please do connect. Always happy to share information after the fact. So get in touch. Yeah, and just a big thanks.
Yeah, I want to thank you as well, Tom. This was like, I always like webinars that provide actionable steps, things that you literally can walk away from and start implementing now. And these are those kinds of tips. I wish I'd had this 20 years ago when I was at university, but that's okay. It's never too late to learn.
Let's do this again, Jeff.
Really appreciate it. Thanks again, Tom. And thanks again for everybody for joining. Have a great morning, day, evening, wherever you may be located. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.